I call Stuart Nash.
Mr. Speaker, it is pretty obvious that members on that side of the House haven't even read the bill. They got to the title and went, OK, let's look at the notes that the research unit said, because the vast majority of nonsense that party, those last speakers have spoken, doesn't even relate to the bill at all. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I think it is quite easy to mount an argument that the sponsor of this bill, Mr. Phil Goff, has done more for international trade than anyone in this House, than anyone over the history of this parliament. Mr. Goff was the man responsible for the New Zealand-China Free Trade Agreement. Now, how can anyone accuse Mr. Goff of racism, of xenophobia, of anything except putting New Zealand's interests first? And this is exactly what this bill does. This bill puts New Zealand's interests first. Nothing more, nothing less. And we in the Labour Party believe that we have an absolute right as representatives of this nation to look after the rights of New Zealanders. Now, to say that we are racist, to say that we are xenophobic, simply means you have not read the bill, you have not understood the bill at all, you have not understood the purpose of the bill, and you also have not understood the purpose of the Overseas Investment Act. Mr. Speaker, all Mr. Goff's bill does is ensure that those who are buying our farmland, and it is our land, as New Zealanders, this is our country, it ensures, Mr. Speaker, that those who are buying our land adds value, that they add value to our land, that they do not come over here and rape and pillage. Mr. Speaker, there is already an Overseas Investment Act that does this, but we do not think this goes far enough, Mr. Speaker. And it is simply because the Minister himself, who has provided a letter to the CEO of the Overseas Investment Office to give that CEO direction on policy initiatives, has said, don't worry about the small farms. Don't worry about the average farms. The only thing I want you to put any effort into is the really, really large farms. And, Mr. Speaker, we do not think this is right. We absolutely believe that New Zealand's global competitive advantage relies on the fact that we are excellent farmers, that we add significant value, that we provide a product to the world that is first class. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are not saying close the borders. We are not saying no to overseas investment. We are not saying overseas investors cannot buy our farmland. That is the last thing we are saying. What Mr. Goff's bill does say, however, is that it is a privilege to own land in New Zealand, which of course is the purpose. If you read the purpose statement of the Overseas Investment Act, it says it is a privilege to own or to be able to invest in New Zealand. And to be able to take advantage of that privilege, to be part of that privilege, to earn that privilege, an investor has got to be able to add value over and above that which can be added by New Zealanders. That test is already in place, Mr. Speaker. That test is in place. All Mr. Goff's bill does is tighten that even further to ensure that those who are not born here but who want to invest here, who want the privilege of owning sensitive New Zealand land, live up to that privilege. That they live up to that privilege and that they add value so all New Zealanders know that people who want to call New Zealand home, who want to have a balanced portfolio that includes New Zealand farmland, understand, absolutely understand what that privilege means. And that privilege, Mr. Speaker, means that that overseas investor has got to be able to add value over and above that of a Kiwi. And the thing that Mr. Goff's bill does is it emphasises jobs. Is there anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with emphasising jobs? And it emphasises the economic imperative, i.e. you can't come in here and run down our farms and take our land or our people or our economy for granted. In fact, you can't do that. You've got to come in here and you've got to make sure that New Zealand jobs are protected and you create New Zealand jobs and that the economic benefit that is going to be created is real. Is there something wrong with that, Mr. Speaker? I do not think so. In fact, I think the vast majority of New Zealanders actually get the fact that Mr. Goff's bill protects the interests of New Zealanders. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less, but we think that is fundamentally important, and that is why we support this bill.